Hey guys, this video is brought to you by Kirkland Extra Fancy Motherfucking Mixed Nuts. Look at that. You see the word peanut in there? No, you don't, because these are extra fancy, motherfucker. PA, Public Address, Pro Audio. Now this is a good scam on its own. The way that they sell everything. If you ever go to Guitar Center, that's retail. That's super high end. I don't recommend any of that. I do have some PA equipment that I'll be selling soon. And the biggest misstep that I see a lot of people doing is the same missteps that I see in car audio, which is that they read something or they heard from somebody, and it's basically it's false information in the way that they're using it. So audio is really just audio. There's not really a big deal about it. But if, let's say you want to start your own DJ business, the first thing you got to worry about is how are you going to power this? So some guys use generators. Some guys, a lot of banda type of Mexican dudes, Latin dudes here in the Valley will often use batteries and then an alternator or some sort of like an alternator tied to a generator, and then the generator spins both or something like that. The batteries give a little bit more runtime and capacity than you would normally get from big, heavy, and expensive quote-unquote PA amplifiers. And they're also quieter typically. A lot of those PA amps, especially like with the iNuke, which is it's a power supply with a switching output. Class D output, so and it's very, very compact, but the way that they get around that, the compromise is that they use heavy-duty, very loud fans. So things like that are not really great. I mean, you can use them for home audio. They're not really great for home audio unless you're like, what I've seen a lot of rich guys do is they have a dedicated closet for all of their equipment, and then they set it up once, and then they have like a control module or some sort of, not necessarily a desktop, but like a dedicated tablet with software on it to control everything. And that's everything from home automation, you know, lowering the screen and things like that. It depends on how fancy you want to get. But there's other ways to do it too. There's other ways to control it with like Raspberry Pis or Arduinos and things like that. I really like those because once you learn the skills for those types of applications and those types of ways to execute, you're super empowered, and you don't have to rely on, you know, Russ Sound or Pinnacle or whoever the brand is to support you. And a lot of times their efforts on home automation and home theater don't go very far because their offerings are very expensive. And if it doesn't take off in the public for some reason, if it doesn't get popular, then they often will drop it. And then you're stuck with a turd. So that's why I really like open source and really just taking things in your own hands and doing your own automation for, again, it depends on how fancy you want to get. I recommend that you practice on your own stuff and practice on your home theater and all that kind of stuff. Now, as far as being a DJ goes, you got to decide on what kind of DJ you want to be. So when you're using PA equipment, typically like let's say a PA 15 or an 18, those are only made to play down to 40 hertz. And so you don't want to use those as a subwoofer. That's a woofer, and it's only made to play down to 40 hertz, which is the lowest that you hear on a bass guitar. So I think the D string on that is 44 hertz. So is the lowest it plays. The other one is the kick drum, and the kick drum is actually pretty high as far as frequency response. It's more in the mid bass. There's not a lot of deep bass with live music. You can feel it. That's what that kick drum is and things like that. But if you're going to be playing pre-recorded music, basically EDM, any decaf or anything like that, you want to use car woofers. Now, which car woofers you use depends on what amplifiers you're using for your setup. There's some Jamaican guys here that I love. They were very open to a lot of the suggestions that I made, and I ended up making them some custom woofers that were basically a good hybrid to give them what they wanted. The best ones, of course, are you know, something with a really high excursion, and do that. Now, and I can, the PA guys kind of freak out at the sensitivity levels because typically they're in the 80s, upper 80s, and they're used to, you know, dealing in the upper 90s or, you know, hundreds. And then they go, wow, you need, you know, fucking 6 kilowatts to run this woofer in, you know, especially like in a big open space like somebody's backyard or, you know, like in a club or wherever they're having the gig. And so I actually recommend, again, it depends on your size, but I actually recommend using like stuff that's readily available, like Kicker Comp 15s and stuff like that, because you can use them in a sealed box and they do pretty good. They just need a little bit of equalization. The other thing about PA is, again, if you're doing live music, just use regular PA gear. Just, you know, make your own stuff or piece things together and use it. And I actually recommend if you want to go, I don't want to say all out, but just if you want to spend a little bit extra money, rather than on brand name equipment, like if you're getting some generic stuff like from me or, you know, whatever from the internet, do some at least bi-amping, if not tri-amping. So, and all you're basically doing is just you have like a little electronic crossover, and typically it's just, oh, this isn't working. That's dead. Thanks, babe. Throw it away. Don't try to fix it.
I'm just gonna check.
I just did it. Baby Jesus, this one's not working. Oh my God. Now it's working? Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the Post-it. There we go. Okay, so you have your three-way. A lot of times these will be, it'll be like a 2-way and 3-way crossover. Like you can run it either way. Like a lot of times it'll be like, I think well, some of them are mono, but you want a stereo one. And you don't have to use the rack mount ones, but a lot of times you can find a used one on eBay or at a Goodwill or something like that. And again, you don't have to use this. You can use like a car audio crossover. Again, that's why a lot of the Mexican dudes here will use car audio, just because it's cheaper, and a lot of the amplifiers already have built-in crossovers and things like that. And so then they just, and if they're really good, they use lithium as the battery banks to kind of help sustain the big, you know, bass pulses and things like that, the big current draw. Again, it depends on your power source, but let's just say you're doing regular gigs and you want to play, you know, recorded music in EDM and things like that. So this is one way to go. And again, like I said, you can get like an old crossover, like for car audio, and all you do is supply it with 12 volts with like a little, you know, 1 amp power supply, and it works great. It now the format that they use, like typically these will use XLRs or 1/4 inch, and sometimes the 1/4 inch is used for balanced. Sometimes the 1/4 inch is used for 2-channel. It depends on your setup and what the amplifier is and the equipment is set for. On car audio, of course, it just uses RCA, which is unbalanced. And then once you get the crossover settings right, and again for subwoofer, you want to cross right around like 150 hertz, maybe even higher, depending on your mid-range bank, your mid-range array. And I got a text tonight for somebody asking about that. And to me, I'm asking, you know, like, how gonzo do you want to get? How crazy do you want to get? Now, these Jamaicans, they wanted to get fucking gonzo. And so we ended up building them, I think 2 18s. So they had 2 18s, and then they had like some, I think it was like a PV amp per, and of course, they're not even matching amps, and that doesn't matter either. So because the great thing about doing separate amps like this, or even a TriAmp or a bi-amp, is that you can control the level on each amplifier. So once you have all your settings, you put your little. That's what's funny too, is these things have a little, a little gain knob on the front, and you just set it, and then you put like a little piece of, like whiteout or some whatever thing on there, letting you know, like if somebody fucks with your settings, or where to set them back where you had them from the last gig. And then once you get all your settings set, then you have your master control, and that's it. So, but these Jamaican guys, they did, let me get this. They did the 218s, and of course, like I said, they had one amplifier on each 18, and then on the mid arrays were kind of fun too. So I think we did a cabinet like this, and this is probably right around 3 feet high, and then we did like 8. And again, if you saw this in a Guitar Center, you know, like, oh, this would be so much money. You're talking about thousands of dollars. And then I think these were all 8 ohm. So it's 8 and 8, and then you can wire them as 16 or 4, depending on your amplifier that you're using. And this is just one channel. Now, you could run 2 channels if you wanted to. This would basically be like a summing, an acoustical summing, where like this is left and this is right. And then you can acoustically sum them. It just means that you're just playing them, and you don't need left and right to hear the stereo signals. Sometimes, depending on your setup, if you want, like, this one will be your left cabinet, and then you make another cabinet over here for your right channel, if you want a really big stereo separation. And then they'll make a tweeter array. Now, this again, it depends on what your aesthetics are. Now, these guys, they put like neon, like right in here on the inside, they'll put like a neon rope light that they get from Amazon and stuff like that. And then sometimes they do the grills. Again, they do a whole light show, and it's kind of cool. Again, it's just people dancing and having fun. It depends on how, quote unquote, professional that you want to get. And as far as lighting rigs go, that can get super expensive. And again, the same advice, which is I recommend that you figure out hacks that are not like where a company has solved your problems. Because when a company solves your problems, you're going to pay lots and lots of money. So it's better to learn it on your own. Also, your experience then makes you more valuable. If you want to go in and do production and event production, like there's actually really great money in just setting up the equipment for a gig and then breaking it down and hauling it away. Like that, you can make millions of dollars that way, doing it for all kinds of venues or a tour or something like that. And a lot of times the band will not, or whoever will not want to buy. They don't want to buy it. They're just going to use it for the gig or the tour or whatever it is. And you follow them around and tour, and you help them. And then if you're also a DJ or you like to spin records, sometimes they'll give you a plug, or they'll let you be the opener or something like that. It gets into all kinds of stuff. Again, it depends on what you're trying to do and your goals. It's really kind of hard to make a small video like this and not get into some of the details. But I wanted to cover what this guy was wanting. So one of the things that we did was we did a little cabinet that adds on. So and how you attach it is up to you. I think we had to make this detachable so that it would fit in the trailer that they had dedicated for the gigs. And again, same thing with trailers. You can buy a trailer. Typically, you can find a used one for like $1,200, $1,500. And then like here in Arizona, you pay the tags once, and it's a lifetime tag. You can even build your own trailer. It depends on what your budget is. It depends on what you're doing. Some guys will even use like a van or a car. And I don't like to do that and cater to those guys, because typically those guys are real cheap, and they're doing it part-time. And so they're making all kinds of shortcuts, which I don't like, and I don't deal with. I don't like to deal with. The same with car audio. When a guy comes in and he wants a $3,000 system for $500, that is very difficult. And a lot of times the guys get real cheap, and they start to really cut bad corners that you don't want to really cut. So, but these Jamaicans were really great, and the performance really showed up. And then when a lot of the work they did themselves, I would just do the design like this, and then I would tell them what to do, and then they would do it. And sometimes they would bring it back, and I would help them wire it up correctly and things like that. And explain to them, do you want to run it 8 ohm or 16 ohm? And usually I ask, what amplifier are you going to be using? And then, usually they pick really substantial, like, again, it depends on what's available on the market. And it depends on, what you're thinking about in the future. A lot of these guys, these Jamaicans, they actually keep spare amplifiers, which is the way to go. And they'll take spare amplifiers with them on gigs. Even in the rack, the power rack that they'll have spare amplifiers set up, ready to go for, in case one takes a shit, which happens all the time. So again, you don't want to let that stop your party because you want to get paid at the end of the night. That's the whole point. So, but for these guys, they would do line arrays and things like this. And you can use just cheap tweeters. It depends on what you want to do. You can even use piezos, whatever it is, piezoelectrics. Those are really cheap. Sometimes you can find a little horn type for like $1 or $5 each, and then just do a shit ton of them. And that's all these companies do anyway. They just build a nice little good looking. And what's funny, it's not even made out of MDF. It's usually made out of like a 1/4 inch or some sort of shitty particle board, and then they just cover the whole thing with carpet, and presto, they've got a product that they're selling for, you know, whatever. And you can look at the pricing on Guitar Center's website on a lot of this stuff. I think that was about it. But when you the biggest thing that you can do is on going a TriAmp is you get to decide not only the crossover point for your setup, but also the levels. And then once you have it, again, to the levels that you like or prefer, and that's not even including equalization. And also it's going to be custom towards the venue. You know, if it's a really reflective venue, you're going to, you know, you can tone it down a little bit, or if it's an open space, you're going to have to pump up the bass and things like that. So, and again, the woofers don't know what venue they're in and what the application they're being used for. That's you, that's on you. And so that's why it's important to understand what drivers you can use and what's recommended for what frequencies. Typically, you don't need any more than 3-way. I don't really recommend anything other than that, because you can run a woofer up pretty high to get mid bass and things like that. Mids typically are real weak, but you don't want to use them. I went over this on some of the other stuff about where to set crossovers and things like that. You don't really want the mids to do any mid bass lifting. You want the subs to do that, and then the mids play from, like, let's say 200, 300 hertz, even 400 hertz on up to the crossover point for the tweeter. And that's it. And then the tweeters take off, you know, from whatever, 5K, 6K, all the way up to 20K. And that's it. That's all you need. And then once you control sometimes there's lobing issues with an array like this. When you do a vertical array like that, it's going to have a really wide lobing characteristics, which may be what you want. Sometimes it's just about what fits. I've seen other ones where they do like a little topper like that, and then there's like 4 piezo's right there like that. Again, it just depends on what cosmetics you want, what look you want, how professional you want it to get. Does it fit in your car and things like that. The end thing is that nobody really is looking at you for the most part. Your job is there to support the event. It's not to be the event for the most part, for most of you guys. Now, if you're like a Skrillex type, and then, you know, you're putting on your own show, then fucking go for it, you know. But for the rest of us, you're just there to spin records and, you know, whatever, and not say anything stupid when the bride and groom are doing their dumb thing or whatever it is. Anyways, I love you guys. I will talk to you later.